Nope.
Yeah, he's the only one. When you see people come in,
Yeah. No, I won't be doing that.
You go-
Nope. Yep.
admit. You
Yep.
click admit.
Yep. Do you admit, Robert?
Yeah.
No.
Hi.
Hey, there he is.
Yeah, I'm here.
How you doing, my friend?
Pretty good, pretty good. How about both of you?
We can't complain. Well, we could, but who'd listen?
That's it. So,
So
yeah.
I was talking to Megan Shransky yesterday. She was going on a bit
Uh-huh.
about things that were unfolding, and I tried to convey to her that one can, feel some kind of comfort in the dialogue back and forth with, intended individuals who, need to be spoken about, I suppose. But
Yeah.
we could put our energy into just going ahead and doing some things. And I was trying to convince her that agency is king of the hill today. It beats inflation and it typically beats bad thinking, hands down. And I think we have that. And she was talking about Marcus Bowman, which I thought his comments at City Hall the other evening were spot on.
Uh-huh.
Let's identify some projects and get after it. So I think that's a way to approach the elimination of the community.
Well, yeah, that's it. But we all have to be on the same page with that because, hey, all this talking ain't gonna get nothing done.
There we go. Couldn't agree more.
Complaining and talking and making so-called verbal plans achieve nothing. And that's all I'm trying to get our people to understand, that we have to focus on what the problem is and try to find a solution. Whether we have to go around people or go through them, that's what we have to do. Just
You're here.
Absolutely.
You're here. Well, I think this is a step in that direction. I think we spoke briefly about the growing mission together, and in as well as the more deeper issues relative not just to general education. I see we have Capella's joined us. Welcome, welcome. We will get to an introduction here shortly, but just to finish up, Robert, the way in which the governor now has addressed another 670 million, to provide some funding that would allow for change to occur, because without funding, typically in governance, no change occurs. So
Right.
she's more recently on Monday come across with 670 million additional dollars that would come out of the teachers retirement fund. She might get a little bit of pushback on teacher retirement because it's 20 billion underfunded already. But what's another billion when you're 20 billion underfunded at the capital level? So my thought is I'm glad that happened, because that gives us a target for this appropriation. This whole project is based on Jonathan and Brenda Carter having the ability to appropriate dollars rather than apply for grants.
Right.
Right. So we're going to cover that a bit. We've covered it with some of the people that have been a part and party to our efforts over the last month or two, and we've basically landed somewhere where we have an idea of the concept of addressing three various elements that were defined for us on the request. One being, give us a number. you know, that you wish to appropriate, and then give us a justification. And of course, that's great. And the justification, there we go. Hi, Paula.
Hi, Paula. And Capella. Hi, Capella. I didn't see you.
Hello, hello, everyone. Good to see everyone.
Good to be seen as a friend more dynamic than myself, has always said, who's no longer with us, unfortunately. But he's with us in spirit, because he was a big advocate for our efforts on behalf of education. Price, and just thinking about him right now, he will be missed. But maybe we can add Hubert as a part of this education process. He'd be so happy if that were so.
Well, we have really good material with him talking about libraries. And I don't know if you recall, Robert, but the way that they sold the Phoenix Center Ottawa Towers was that they were lifting off of our work with Maddie and Bill, and said they would do a library annex at Ottawa Towers. That would be their community benefit.
Yeah, we can still make that happen under this banner. Yes. So why did you introduce Capella, and we'll get a short, brief history. And
great. And I see George is joining us today as well, Paula. Is that right?
Yes, he is. He's joining us, and I'm gonna go off camera and reach out to the other partners and see if they are able to come on. Okay.
Yep.
Beautiful.
Yep.
Okay, so we have quite a diversity of experience here represented. Capella is doing all kinds of things with organizational leadership, and I want her to give us an intro and deeply around film and documentary, just so that you know, Robert, with exchange between, they did a documentary and Capella's a producer, and working on establishing how film communities tie into the way that work needs to be organized. And they were working on the Flint water crisis, so that kind of ties to our work around post-emergency management and all of that. So, and then we have, just as a brief overview of everyone who's here, Robert Bass, citizen community citizen district councils, and then Paula and Dr. Paula and George are pioneers in virtual learning. And so Paula could talk about her experience. She wrote a dissertation on the flipped classroom more than 2 decades ago. And so we're kind of tagging different elements of a working collaboratory that can extend throughout the year and create a demonstration of reimagining education through this Innovation Districts Collaboratory. So Capella, could you give us an intro into your work?
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me, of course. So I am from Detroit, East Side, all Detroit public school educated, and went on to Michigan for psychology. And I was always interested in like that 33% of our lives that we spend at work. And then I got sidetracked and I became a filmmaker, and I did that for the last 25 years, and making a bunch of, like, maybe probably 16 or 17 feature films, docs, social issue docs, as well as narratives. And then I found myself back in the space of organizational dynamics, and I went back and got some more education and training. And so now I work to make organizations, temporary organizations like a film set, or permanent organizations like a nonprofit. I work to make them a little bit better and teach leadership how to make people feel like they matter.
All right.
It's hard to do today.
Yeah.
I think people, I always start off everything I say is like, what I'm going to tell you is what we learned in kindergarten. So you can think about that two ways. You can think about it. One is it must be very, very important if that's the first thing they taught us when they put us all in a room for organized education. Be kind, play fair, cooperate, share. And so I believe we all have it in us. We just have to be reminded.
Yeah. Did you see the book I put up?
No, what is
All
it?
I really need to know I learned in kindergarten.
Yes, exactly.
That's Jen's favorite book.
Still.
It sits on a little prop here.
So Robert, could you give us a little brief on the CDC?
Yeah, I'll do my best. Well, we're a community-wide CDC. We oversee community development, economic development, and redevelopment in our district areas. Used to be 7 CDCs in the city of Pontiac. Now we only have one really active CDC, but there are 2, at least 3 that say they're CDCs. So we're pretty much in District 1. We pretty much collaborate with all the programs like association, block clubs, and any other groups that's active in our community. So we all collaborate together to make sure that everybody's getting the same information, no matter which way it comes. But we also are very active with the council and the administration, because we deal directly with the administration and the directors. So that's pretty much quick.
You're here. You're here. And Paula, if you could just give us give them an idea of your background and so forth, please.
Yes. So greetings again, everyone. It's a delight to be on here with you all. I'm Paula. You'll hear me refer to George as Wayne, but he'll answer to either one. We've been married for 44 years, and his dad was George. My dad was George. Our son is George, so you can call him George, but he'll answer the Wayne for me. Anyway, we run American International Cyber Institute. Previously, we were also known as Cyber Ed Center. But when we became global, we rebranded into AICI. We actually came under a vision to positively transform the lives of youth, young adults, and older persons who had not obtained their high school diploma for whatever reason that they stopped out. And we don't offer a GED, but we don't disparage a GED. It's just not in our playwheel, if you will. But we go back and research the transcripts, obtain the transcripts from wherever they matriculated, and we transfer those transcript credit hours. And oftentimes they may even have some credit hours from middle school or elementary school as allowed by the state, because even if you took say you took a foreign language in middle school, that can count towards your graduation credit. Typically, a traditional brick and mortar school does not do that because, as we say in the education world, they really need butts in the seats for 4 years. Because of our virtual approach, we are not confined by that with our schools, and we are approved by the school by MDE. But we require 18 credits. Most school districts require a minimum of 24 or 32. And therein you can see where the rub is of the butts and seats. So we go back, we don't compete with traditional districts, but we can support and really uplift them because we can bring students to them through us and help them earn not only their high school diploma, but also post-secondary credits. We also were blessed to meet the late, great Senator Jack Faxon, worked with him, and we carry forth his legacy through the international school that's under our umbrella, as well as we have a school in Nigeria and primarily out of Abuja, but we're approved by the Minister of Education in Nigeria to work throughout the country. And so we are our work is our vocation, but it's also our avocation. And Wayne's the tech brains behind us. He wrote our first learning management system that we still use, and we're looking forward to refining at this time.
Awesome.
Wow.
Oh, let me add that part of what we want to do with this innovative hub is that as we were talking about the bridging the digital divide, that's how we kind of came together, because we recognized that was missing with a lot of our students who needed real-time digital access. And at one point we had a grant where we could gift them the Chromebooks, and but then they wouldn't have internet in their homes, or they wouldn't have fast internet. And, you know, they're paying for broadband, but it wasn't, there's a thing called throttling that the companies do, where they go into communities and they just, even though you're paying for something, they decide, oh, in your community, you don't need this full speed. And Wayne's the expert on that. But anyway, so that's what came to make me be with Connect 313 and the work in that community to make certain people were getting access to internet. And for a while we had ACP where it was paying for it, but that ended, you know, April 30th. So that's a scary piece. But we also work closely with the Inkster Public Library. So we know we can set up a tech hub there, as well as there's a new school that we're working to help establish the African City School for innovation and leadership. And we invited them today as well. So I'll stop there. Thank you all for listening.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Go ahead, Wayne.
Forgive me, the technology is not working the way it should today. So that's one of the reasons I have my phone and the computer up. But I want to add to what Dr. Watkins is saying is that, and I just want to talk about the need. I was actually the one trying to make sure that Dr. Watkins' vision goes forward. And we recruited students, and I went to 100, maybe 200 homes. And let me tell you, when you register one student for high school, I had families who want to get a high school diploma. Not only a high school diploma, but they want to improve their lot in life, because all of our students that we recruited had stopped out of school. Some of them are young, most of them were young ladies who had 2 and 3 young people at home, and they wanted to change their lot in life. So what I'm saying to all of you, that there is a real need for us to provide for young people, especially in the Detroit area and the areas around, a high school diploma, and also some vocational skills. And those are things that we're looking for. And again, I've been in IT since 1973, so don't calculate how old I am. But one of the things we have tried to do is demystify IT. And you all know that AI is here. And there are going to be jobs that are going to be created because of AI. And we need to make sure we're about the business of ensuring that these young people are people who are in school or are people who are out of school are retooled. So that's all I wanted to say. I wanted to address the need. And I will say this, when these young people graduated, it changed their lives. A lot of them went to nursing. A lot of them did other things, but it transformed their lives. And I want you to think about this as I shut up for the rest of the evening. We can change our whole village by a few dollars and doing some things. And I know that happens. Anyway, it's nice meeting all of you. My name is George Watkins, and hopefully we'll talk again.
And indeed we will, Jordan. Your insights are the very nature of, you know, the process that we're applying for in this appropriation. I think, again, the integer there from a technological point of view is understood, but we also then have the situation which is developing on how brains are wired. And the advocacy there for being careful about how we go about the introduction and so forth. And I know that your experience has been positive. And on the other hand, we have to recognize that this new integer that is arriving also has merit. And I'm wondering what your thoughts might be on that.
the new integer meaning?
Meaning that the launch of a phone in a child's very unsophisticated hands and mind, but with a very sophisticated tool, can be brutal.
Well, it can't. It's not used correctly. And you're absolutely right. You have to make, I mean, they're putting controls on these things now. In fact, I had to fix a problem because, Google is blocking a lot of different types of email. So cybersecurity becoming more important. But unfortunately, we're going to have to deal with that because technology is here.
Right.
And if you go even to Zoom, they have chat bots, and chat bots it's just AI where you ask a question to AI and it will give you the answer. So it's here. And it's here because now we're going to have to tackle this situation as we see it. And unless Congress or the government put some controls on AI, which I think they should, we're going to be we're going to be really a technological society. And we have to and we're working very closely and very hard to bridge that gap. And I will tell you this, that high-speed internet is not here. And a lot of these systems that are being developed require high-speed internet. And in certain cases, and especially in the urban areas, that does not exist. And and with our experience with delivering cyber education, we've had issues with that because it's not fast enough for the system that we created. It bottlenecks sometimes, and we had to fix that. And if you launch it and the kids can't get on or get bored, then you have defeated the purpose. And so those are things we have to simultaneously fix. And so we've been in this business so long that we kind of know all of the ins and outs and all the problems that they faced even when they launched everything during the pandemic. We had already faced them, and we had already found solutions for them, for some of them. But you're absolutely right. It does create another problem, and I know that you've read all kind of articles about how social media has given a lot of our students are depressed, have access to data, but that's a lot of that is government issue. The government has issue. Your privacy is out there. Anyone can get your data. So we're gonna have to deal with what we have to deal with. Sorry about that. A long answer for a short question.
Oh no, those are excellent thoughts and need to be included in this offering. It's a moment in time where we know that governance is not dealing with this yet, and they're, as you said, going to have to. And what better way to do that but in a non threatening way, but rather in a inspired process that searches out answers to the questions. They would be wise to be thinking that is a fundable, and I'm sure they are, but they're unfortunately challenged by dollars right now. They've just spent, well, we spent 6 trillion, mostly on the wrong things. And so here's education now going to have to reinvent itself, literally and figuratively, over the dollars that they've just spent that no longer are going to be continuing. They're shutting them down as we speak. And yet we still have these fundamental problems. And they're new problems. They're not old problems that we need to still recognize and facilitate and solve, but rather new problems unfolding. And that's going to be a continuum. So we need to get those critical insights that you just defined in a shortened version in preparation for this proposal that we're going to follow up on. This is a really simple proposal. Can you go to the mural,
Yeah.
Monica?
Real quickly though, Jim, before that, can we just may I just introduce Dr. Elizabeth, who is on now. She's a visionary for the African City School. And also Mr. Kendale, who is on that board, but he is also the president of the board for the Inkster Public Library.
Oh, awesome.
And both of those are entities that we want to include, or what we've already, stated we want to include as potential recipients with the submission that we are developing. And I wanted them to be a part today so they could get the visual of the mural and understand some backdrop on this. So Dr. Elizabeth, you want to say hello, Mr. Kendallay?
Hello, everyone. How are you? She's already introduced me. My name is Dr. Elizabeth Jai Bridges, and we are in works to get this public urban boarding school in the state of Michigan. So we're very excited on this process and project. Thank you all.
Thank you. Public boarding schools, what an interesting concept. And can you give us a sense of?
Dr. Elizabeth, you want to say a little bit more about that?
Oh, okay. So the goal is to have a tuition-free boarding school for middle and high school students. The goal is to give them the same opportunities that we see private boarding schools having, but at little or no cost. We see that students do well when they're present in classes, in school, and giving them a structured environment where they're on campus. They won't have to worry about the things happening at home. They're with trained individuals that can assist them in their assignments, after school programs, transportation. I was talking to someone, and I know there's this push about childcare, and the focus is normally between early childcare, which is like 0 to 5, but there's a need for childcare after, middle school, elementary, and high school as well. After school, the parents are still at work, and not every parent can leave work at 3 o'clock to go pick up their children. And for the most part, the children are either at home, they get home and they're taking care of themselves, and or they don't have a village that can support them. So having trust that they have adult supervision and they're not just at home playing games, but actually studying or doing some other extracurricular activities with their peers would be a better situation. So in my doctoral dissertation, I studied the Horizon Upward Bound program at Cranbrook and saw what was going on there. And I said, oh, this is awesome, because they took inner city students from Detroit and brought them to the campus for 6 weeks over the summer. And I was able to interview the students. I interviewed 4 students from the different grade levels, 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th. And I think 2 of them were able to get scholarships to go to Cranbrook itself from Cass Tech. And one of the young men said that his whole exposure to other international students, other things that he wasn't exposed to while he was in his community, it helped him see a different outlook on what education could be, what his future could look like, even to the point of him trying to go to college, having the aspiration to go to college. So I think this kind of structure given to a mass opportunity of minorities or low income or people that could not afford private boarding school would be, is a great prospect for what our future in Michigan could look like.
Well, we certainly agree, and I worked with the Outward Bound program for a couple of years while the director with McMahon-Hubbard Observatory at Pontiac. It's an awesome program. And Mr. DeLay, can you give us a sense of your work?
All right, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Akindele Akinyemi. I'm the president of the board of directors for the Global African Business Association. We're based right here in Romulus, Michigan. We started in Inkster, Michigan 10 years ago. I was at the time teaching in Houston, Texas. I'm a native Detroiter. We are a business support, business education network, a economic development agency. Our job is to create economic impact between Africa, the Caribbean, and here in the United States with small, medium-sized enterprises, whether that's through agricultural imports and exports, textiles, and also non-agricultural products such as minerals for mobility purposes and so forth. My background is in education. I've been in education over 25 years. That's both K-12 and higher education. I'm part of this board, and I'm part of this board mainly because of my expertise in startups in terms of charter schools, as well as being a charter school administrator and an instructor for 16 years, and both in the state of Michigan and here in the state of Texas. What we do is, and also Dr. Watkins mentioned, I'm the president of the board of directors for the Leanna Hicks Public Library of Inkster. This is my second stint being a president on the board. My original term from 2015 to 2019, I helped lead an effort in the city of Inkster to build a brand new library, state-of-the-art library at that time. And now because it's up and running, we want to move it into a 5-star status library. So we're rebuilding our leadership. We're rebuilding some of our goals, technology, and so forth to make it competitive, not just at the local level, but at the global level as well. And so that's me in a nutshell. I mean, I could be very, very long-winded about accomplishments and things of that nature, but this is what we do, and this is what I do. Thank you.
Well, thanks so much for that. And the Inkster Public Library was that a rehab or a totally new project?
So the Inkster Public Library, the original library was flooded back in 2018. The city said they weren't going to pay for it. That's all politics. So we're not going to get into that. But as we set up a temporary location of the library, we purchased a building in the city of Inkster that was existing. I think it was a Social Security building at the time. And we purchased it, and then what we did was we expanded it from 6,000 to 10,000 square feet and gutted it and created the library that exists today.
You're here. Here.
Wow.
Wow.
It is beautiful. It's beautiful.
You know, it's all
ready
about
to serve the community.
Wow.
Well, we salute your work and welcome you.
Thank you very much.
Need a field trip pretty soon.
Yeah, field trip.
We can do field trips anytime. Even if it's a time where the library is closed, if you can just reach out to me, we can arrange a time, and I'll be happy to give you a personal tour.
Awesome. What's the summer program? Is it all booked up, or is somebody?
So our library director is finalizing the summer program. I have a meeting with her next week to see where we at in terms of the summer reading programs that we will be hosting at our library this summer.
Well, we might be interested in adding something to the list. Okay.
Okay.
A visit would tell us what that might be.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Let's go on the mural and take a look at the ask so that everybody's familiar with it, because we have a couple of folks who are not aware. This is a real simple ask. It contains 3 elements, one being a number, one being a justification, and then finally the handoff. And the handoff is kind of interesting, because although we're dealing directly with the state government, they still have to hand off the dollars through the individuals in the communities that we're addressing. So in Pontiac, there would be someone that would be identified in Inkster. There would be someone that would be identified in Detroit. There would be somebody that would be identified, and so forth and so on. We're not sure, because as you know, that's a good way to lose track of your money in some instances by handing it off to the city council or their designate. So we're really concerned about that, in whom that might be. In Pontiac, I think we're in pretty good shape there. I believe we're in good shape in Detroit. And, we would like to get Flint involved, but Melissa Mays, who would be a lead in that fashion, is somewhat overwhelmed in the moment with something that she's been working on for quite some time. And it's coming to another head moment, and she just needs to be taken with that. But we're going to include her in the offering anyways. And then we have a possibility of doing something in Dearborn. And so we're looking at those 4 or 5 as ways and means in much the same fashion, but we have to get somebody we can trust if we're going to make this offer valid, and identify them. And we'd like to do that in the offer rather than letting Jonathan determine those things after the fact, after we've made the proposal.
Hence, Jim, the reason why I wanted Mr. Kindley at the table, because as the president of the board of the Leona Hicks Library for the city of Inkster, it's a public library, and in that way can serve as that conduit for Inkster, and be the one who could be the receiver.
Well, I don't mean to interrupt, but they really will require somebody representing a district.
You mean like a school district?
Like a school district or a state representative or a senator.
Well, but see, Inkster doesn't have a school district. So
Right.
that's why I even put State Rep Jewel Jones's name down.
But that's where it would go, is to Jewel Jones's. Okay, that would be, Jules Jones would be the person that would be identified. This is the way he explained it to us.
Okay.
Is he would drop it on them, whoever those were identified in those particular cases, and then it would be up to them to respond. And all we're trying to understand is how we can help ourselves by not just allowing that to be willy-nilly and whoever he decides on, but rather than have a relationship with that individual. And if we can outline that in the offer, I think he'll go along with it, because he has nothing to gain by making the decision.
Right. Mr. Kindley, can you provide some insight on how the library functions as a district in Inkster, and if we can work with Jewel Jones, State Rep Jewel Jones?
Well, let me bring clarity to what's going on in Inkster. Number one, Jewel Jones is term limited. He's not even a state rep. It's dealing with Gala. He's the state rep, and the state senator is Dana Pohanke. So I want to clarify that.
Okay.
We know her.
The library, the other thing about the library structure, the library does not fall under the city of Inkster. We are an autonomous government. We have to collect taxes to keep the library functioning, and we are our own library system and district in the city of Inkster. We do not go to City Hall. We do not report to the mayor or city council, none of that. And also, we are elected officials. I'm an elected official as a board president, along with my other 5 colleagues on the board. So we have autonomy on the library system itself in the city of Inkster. Also, I have a question, is I'm looking at this appropriation package here. Now, who are we? Just looking at this, I like what I'm looking at, but just looking at these dollars, and these dollars are going to Detroit and Flint. You want to involve Dearborn. Who are we approaching I'm looking at Pontiac, Oakland School ISD, STEM Center Tech Hubs. We're trying to build an innovation hub in the city, in our library district. I guess my question is, who are we approaching with a proposal for appropriation dollars to kind of get this ball rolling? That's what I'm curious about.
Great question. And the answer to that is Brenda Carter, State Rep Brenda Carter.
Oh, okay. I know Brenda Carter. That's a buddy.
Oh, okay, good.
That's my buddy.
Okay.
Okay, this meeting,
Yeah, Brenda loves me, so we're good. Okay, that's my buddy.
this meeting's over. Okay, no, isn't it funny how the world works when it's working right? Okay.
Yeah, Brenda Carter is one of our allies. Actually, Dr. Elizabeth and I met with Brenda Carter a couple of times in her office in Lansing.
This is too good. Okay. So Brenda's a dear friend, and you know, with this Michigan Growing Together, we've been at education in Pontiac for a couple of decades. I hate to say this, more than that, maybe 3 decades. While I was the director of the McMath-Hulbert Observatory in Lake Angeles, which is adjacent to Pontiac and in the Pontiac School District.
Okay.
You know, it took the Michigan Growing Together report to really nail the situation in a dynamic fashion from the governance point of view, not from, hey, you know, things aren't so good, but rather the abject failure of the current system. And it's only exasperated by the understanding or lack thereof of the way in which we develop curriculum, and then the way in which we teach to a test,
Okay.
none of which are relevant today. And it is in this moment, since they've written the report, that we responded. And we responded to Brenda by saying, and she was on the education committee, so she's part and parcel of having developed the report and knows it, you know, inside out. Although she has said that we know more about it than she does, which I think is, you know, a slight overstatement. But we have studied it, and you know, if you're talking about dollars, well, education's been chasing dollars forever, and it eats all that it observes and comes in contact with, and yet is failing. So we look at this from a different point of view. It's not the money, it's what we're doing. It's the how and the what. And there's an interesting thing about curiosity and creativity in the fact that the shift from an industrialized proposition to a more creative efforting on behalf of our workforce and the knowledge-based instructional model that could be done and should be done, and in our case, will be done for almost virtually nothing. I mean, what you're saying is you're going to be teaching, you've heard this many, many years, teaching to passion, but it's more than that. It's teaching to curiosity. It's something that is given by God and costs nothing, and addressing it in a different fashion as opposed to dismissing it because we're all going to be working in a factory has led us to the situation we find ourselves in today. And Brenda found this a compelling discussion, and I think rightfully so, because they're faced with an unfundable proposition. In fact, the governor's just come up this week with another $670 million out of the teachers' retirement fund to fund something because they had no dollars for this, and yet we wanted to do it anyway. I mean, our original discussion was around the fact that we would do this anyway, and then the factor that they were quite intrigued by the fact that you might be able to get something out of it that they hadn't thought about. In other words, changing the way in which you work in the education business, which is, you know, not new. This is not a new idea. It's timing. We're at a right moment where what we have is failing, and what we need is something that is engaging. And there's nothing that I know of more engaging in a young person than their imagination and creativity. Yet very, very rarely do we engage it in a traditional education efforting. I'd be interested in anyone else's thoughts along those lines.
Robert, has hand up there.
Well, I just had a question when it comes to uh, directing the funding. Is the funding going to be targeted for a specific program? And who's going to monitor that money and make sure that it's being used in a feasible way that's going to be beneficial, and not just spend it and it's all gone, and then we're looking for other funding and we don't even know what benefit we got out of it, what real benefit did we get out of it. And I just want to see, are we going to have a particular program that this money is going to go to be targeted at? Or is it just going to go to a community representative? No.
Program.
Absolutely. And as usual, great question. We will be in charge of the execution, we being the people that are on this call and others who couldn't be here today. And that is what we're offering the state, is that opportunity. And what their case was if this were so, and they were quite intrigued with the concept, that they would be willing to fund it. And so we were requested to draft a proposal and put it forward on behalf of an appropriation short term.
Okay.
And
Okay.
I hope you recognize that the people that are involved in this have experience in education. This isn't, you know, a third party with zero experience and has a wonderful aspiration. This is something that is linked to the way in which education has failed, and more importantly, how it can maybe resolve some of its failure merely by addressing young people's imagination and creativity. And we have a program and a vehicle to work that. And some of it's involved in mural, some of it's involved in Miro, some of it's involved in networking, some of it's involved in actually working closely with young people as opposed to the traditional curriculum.
Okay, one last thing. Since I was on the school board for a number of years, well, 14 years, it still leaves me with questions on educating. And I see a nice variety of people that's really concerned about how this rolls out. So if I ask a question, it may go back to when I was on the school board and the lack thereof of things that was really beneficial to the students. I am a great advocate for the students and their learning process. And one of the things when Mr. Watkins was speaking, when it comes to telephones, I know that we're way behind on other places like California when it comes to our youth using telephones. And they were using it for educational purposes, where I was using it for other means. And that's the kind of thing I would like to see that come out of this, is that we advance the things that we have let get so far behind that we're still trying to play catch up. And when it comes to money, when you're dealing with money, I just want to see the accountability of all these millions of dollars that come in and they go, and we still don't see a benefit. That's all. Thank you so much for your time. I'll stay and be quiet because y'all on the floor.
It's funny you mentioned California. I wish we had somebody from California here. Well, we do have someone from California. We do have someone from California here. Can you weigh in on your insights regarding you know, technology and so forth and so on? Because I think you're right in the right place at the right time.
Well, first of all, correction, I am from the D. I am not from California. What up, no? I've only been in California for 3 years, but I do find that they are very generous and progressive in the way that they treat things out here. it's definitely a different vibe. I can't speak on that specifically, but it makes sense. That definitely jives with what I understood and how they treat people out here in quality of life. But I can't speak beyond.
Well, I think, most of us can't speak about this particular element too deeply because it's just unfolding. Okay. And there's a, in one of the pieces, I'm sorry.
Measurements,
Yeah.
like how will we measure the new?
Yeah, great point. Great point. And I had come across this book, The Anxious Generation, and kind of, got a little sample understanding of where they were coming from. That work goes back a decade or so. And it I think is addressing the obvious, something that is so dynamic, such as a smartphone, has, resulting concerns. And part of that has to do with the brain's way in which it's wired and how it thinks. And if the phone's doing the thinking, that's a problem. If the phone's wiring in a certain fashion, that's a problem. What is the wherewithal to address that? I'm not sure. This is such a new piece of information that I'm not sure how that fits, but I know it should fit in this conversation. We have people who are familiar with technology. I can significantly point to one thing. I don't have a phone. I've never had a phone. And there was a reason. And I never knew what it was. I still don't. I'm not sure. It suggests that the way in which one obtains information, I still do it the old-fashioned way. And I work on a computer every day, but the point is the suggestion is that it's the addictive quality of the phone in hand that they're concerned about. And I have to say, I recognize that. I also have to say, this is the 21st century, and there's certain things that we don't understand about how in which the world has changed and how in which the individual that is engaged in making a technological exchange within the context of their learning certainly is important. And I doubt there's a lot of data on that at this point. But it's certainly a piece of the equation that needs to be addressed, and we're going to include it. I'm a big champion of AI, not for the sense that it gives me all these answers, but for the process of having to develop a coherent question, something that AI is really based on, as opposed to what most people think is it's based on getting the answer. Well, you're only going to get as good an answer as good a question as you can put forth. Young people today are not doing questions, they're searching for answers. And our process is about questions.
And we have to take in all of the understanding gained from years of developing digital learning models.
Yeah.
And knowing that how threatening that was to status quo education. So that you've got like a sensorial approach to people wanting to have the kids not have any other information source except the teacher in front of the classroom droning on that they may or may not be interested in, that has no understanding of what their passions or interests are, and is not interested in engaging those interests and passions. So you have we have this toxic, and then the reason why we are in this toxic position where there's only a handful of tech companies controlling is that we didn't adopt technology in our schools. We did not do value creation in the way that technology was supposed to be a democratizing force. So, and then we still have the schools, they can use some of these arguments, even though we know there's toxicity pumping into young brains because of the addiction drive that these tech companies produce. But you still have to contend with the original problem of the schools being authoritarian situations
To begin with.
to begin with.
But the shift, I think, from, to a knowledge-based economy is what's at the bottom of this juggernaut called technology. And that, I think is the most important ingredient in what we're describing here. And the young people are those that are actively engaged, are the best barometer of how technology is impacting education, because they're the ones that are having to deal with it, and deal with it in most cases in an overwhelming fashion. So we're interested in how that particular element plays out, not only in education but in business, which is just beginning that transition. Any other thoughts from others?
I have a thought in that you're right that with the onslaught of technology that we're losing a little bit because we don't want a machine telling us how to add. People need to know how to add, and then they can use technology to enhance that. Even now with coding, I learned machine language. What is the machine doing? And you can put up a website without knowing anything about web development. So that's a little scary for me. But I want to entertain something to you is that you would talk about education and better education. But the one area that we really don't ever talk about is you still can't get rid of the family. And I know that Dr. Elizabeth's idea of a boarding school is a great idea because it creates an environment. But what we have to really take a look at is that not only do we really need to re-educate our students, we really need to educate our parents on what is needed for their student. Now, if you ask Dr. Watkins, she will tell you that when we send kids to school, they need to be at a certain grade level. And if certain things are not met, these students, for the most part, come to school 2 grade levels behind. And that is one of the reasons why you see a lot of students who drop out of school are not making the grade. That is a root cause issue. Now, I'm going to say this because I'm really believe this. My mother, bless her soul, did not get her high school diploma. It's not because she wasn't smart, because she just didn't get her high school diploma, but she got it after I was 5 years old. But what she did is every day when I went to school, I knew my ABCs. I could read, I could write, I could read out of a chapter book. Now, I don't expect everyone to know that. And I'm not sure she knew that, but she knew that she gave me an extra push because when I went to school, I was not 2 grade levels behind. And so consider that when we start talking about how do we improve education, because you cannot get rid of the family structure, because that is an environment that they go back to. That's where they live. And I've been in elementary school, and I've seen teachers who are very capable, but the kids come in with all kinds of issues and concerns, and it's all about raw material as well. So I want you to consider that as well as education for parents, because parents need to also be re-educated in the new paradigm of education as well.
Great point. Absolutely great point.
Robert's.
Yeah. We're probably going to lose Robert here. He's got a condition he needs to address today. But these talking points are the very essence of what we're putting forward. And I'm glad they're coming up because this offer and proposal doesn't necessarily have to spell out all of these wonderful dynamics and challenges. That's the nature of our relationship with Brenda Carter and so forth. And we wanted to keep it simple, but this is the endearing quality of the work at hand, is exactly as we're describing and discussing. And we're in this moment where the traditional education system is meeting its ultimate challenge. I think the young people that we're engaging in working with will make good on the promise that they know, but we don't know that they know. And it's a I don't have the answer. I'm interested in finding it. And they are the ones who actually understand the situation they find themselves in. And I think that's where the investigation begins.
So like, if we're thinking about, because measurements are gonna come up and we wouldn't be measured, it'll be a total different measurement system than what we're used to. Everything, like if we're doing, say we're doing place-based learning and we're attempting to address the Growing Michigan Together Council report, and it's begging for placemaking, and it's also begging for kids to stay. And we've done pilot programs with kids that solved that problem prior to. We know kids are good placemakers, but yet if you say that to adults that are measuring something totally different from that, that
Doesn't fall
it
in.
doesn't register, and it doesn't matter how excited the kids are, doesn't matter how meritorious their proposal is, it does not compute and translate. So we have to figure out, okay, and we love the Hidden River Park project in Pontiac, because we have a full, like, we've done a complete long-term placemaking project where we saw how the kids performed, and then we got to see how governance performed, and it was completely opposite of what you would want for placemaking. And the kids did all the things right, and the adults failed miserably. So how do we do a measurement system of, okay, here's what you do in order to make a place, and here's what you do not do? We can start grading the adults with an F. So, okay, go ahead, Paula.
I think of another piece that we need too for the African City Schools proposal. We have a survey, and I don't know if Dr. Elizabeth placed that survey in the chat, because one of the pieces that it could address as we're building this, if you if you all could complete that survey, part of the Michigan Growing Together, as we're looking at this funding, with the questions of how retaining and attracting
Right.
individuals, and that could be even something we can look at doing down the line, is a pre-assessment, if you will, of, I think I heard that in one of your videos where Jim was asking the question, how many of you think you want to leave Michigan as soon as you have an opportunity, right?
Right.
Well, if we have some data that we've already acquired, and then we look at how many people, made a decision to stay because of the impact of the work that we're doing. That could be something that you're talking about too, Robert, of how are we impacting people, the real data of the programs are making the difference.
Well, I think you put your finger right on it. The data for the last decade is our best and brightest leave the state. And we had encountered this when we were working with Oakland University, and some of the students from Oakland University, and I would ask them, so how many are you staying? None. And now, the Growing Michigan Together points this out in dramatic detail. And it's been going on for a decade, and it's expected to go on for, some time. If you're not engaged and part of that has to do with something as simple as play. We don't have kids playing outside anymore. It's too dangerous,
Right.
or
It's illegal.
it's illegal. It's insane.
There are so many forces preventing children from just being part of the environment. Total segregation.
And there's a simple solve to that, and that's engaging them in the city in projects that they create, that they imagine, that they build. And if you're not doing that, then you're not going to be there. If you're not in your environment and you're not welcome in your environment and you're not participating in your city environment, you're not going to be living there. And that is just, the nature of that beast. And, capitalize on the fact that we're in a transitionary economy as well, one from an industrialized automotive one to a more knowledge-based one. And young people, they are drawn and attracted to various things, and unfortunately, manufacturing isn't necessarily the bright light that it was in the years past or in the decades past.
Elizabeth?
No one can argue the excitement and validity of the process of middle class that changed the world. But unfortunately, going forward, we're going to have to shift gears.
Elizabeth, you have your hand up.
Yes, I wanted to speak towards the play because it's interesting that right now when I come home with the kids, and immediately we park the car. I have a 5-year-old and I have a 10-year-old and a 12-year-old. The 12-year-old is a girl, the other two are boys, and we come out. We come to the house, the boys, they jump out, they see their friends down the street, and they just run down the street to go play basketball. And I tell my husband, I said, they didn't ask for permission. And they just run and go play basketball with their friends. Lately, we've been getting knocks on the door, and I'm like, who is that? Oh, that's Rob down the street. He wants me to come out and play. So it's interesting how I've not met their parents, but we see all these kids in the middle of the street, and my street is like a pretty busy street, but it's like self-taught. They know how to get out the street. This is in the city of Detroit. I live in the city of Detroit, and they get out of the street and then they come back and they play, and across the street is my neighbor. She works for the city and she sees all the kids. She does balloons, and just that coming outside of the house and just playing. And that's what I really envision for the boarding school as well, is to just have that environment. I tell my neighbors, oh, do you let your kids go outside and play? Oh, it's not safe. Oh, they talk to strangers. Oh, they can get kidnapped. There's kidnappings every day. But when they're in a structured environment, we relieve them of that worry, especially that what you hit on the nail, that play, extracurricular activities, club organizations, and then in the evening they do study prep. Because I tell my son, I say, hey, you need time to go study, not homework. There's a difference between homework and studying. Because homework is you're doing work that you've already learned. Studying is preparing for the future, preparing for future work. And I believe that also plays a part, the play and study.
Well,
Wow.
Well said, Elizabeth, and kudos to allowing the play to take place. That's magical. Neighborhoods make cities. There's this thought that cities make neighborhoods. No, neighborhoods make cities, and obviously something very good is happening in your neighborhood. It's an exemplar. It's not happening in every neighborhood, and it needs desperately, the kinds of articulations that young people acquire from learning in the real world out among their friends and colleagues. And that is probably the most important part of a child's education. And we don't have it in school anymore. There's no play in school anymore. It's unfortunate that transition space that used to be something that was free and available has been threatened in certain situations with violence and unsavory activities and so forth and so on, to the point where the kids are not getting those kinds of experiences. I can't imagine. Most of my formative understanding of how the world works came about as a matter of being out in the the world and experiencing how the world works. And if you're not getting that, I don't know how you process. Well, I don't know how you process a lot of things today as a child. And I think back to the time I was young and thinking and thought I was thinking about things that were a little deeper than the average individual. And yet today, faced with climate change and the work transformation and the internet and technology, that's a lot. That's a lot of carry-on baggage that one has to sort through as a young person. I just the social proposition, you know, it speaks. You know, when you have an immature mind and you have a very sophisticated tools, strange things happen, and it's really an unfortunate occurrence. And I think technology is taking a bad rap because of it. I think that we haven't given a good deal of thought to this tool that's rolling around in everyone's pocket and how powerful it is. And in some cases, it can be dangerous. And young people are impressionable, and there's a lot of opportunities for thought that is not well thought, and it's unfortunate.
Elizabeth, did you have your hand back up or is it?
No, sorry, I didn't lower it. I lowered it now.
Okay.
Monica, can I say something quickly? Like all of my work is on relationship capital because technology is advancing, intergenerational dynamics is coming into play like never before, and the generations are getting smaller because, or shorter in time because of technology. And we're not going to be able to stop that. But the one thing that's not going to change is how we treat each other. And we're not talking our kids, and we see it right now in Gen X or Gen Z, which is sort of my area of expertise, is going to organizations and try to teach us Gen Xers how to deal with these Gen Zers, because it's a whole different animal. And the alphas, or whatever they're going to call that next wave that's coming into the workforce after the Zers, are going to be even different. So my work is talking about relationships and how we treat each other in teaching communication skills and empathy, and there's cooperation. Like I said in the beginning, everything that we learned in kindergarten, because going to school to become an accountant is, by the time you get out of school and you take the exams and you go into your firm, the technology is going to change the way you practice. But what won't change is your ability to create relationships. And so it's the relationships that's going to keep us all together and moving forward. So that's what I just wanted to just point that out. Like, we're never going to be able to keep up with technology. We just got to teach people how to talk and treat each other.
What a marvelous point. So we need to figure that kind of, how does that become curriculum?
Well,
Have you given that any thought? How does the organizational aspect of human relationships become curriculum driven?
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
Go ahead,
No, go ahead.
Capella.
Well, just quickly, I know you had Jonathan Haidt's book up, and he has very specific things. I mean, he is very adamant that kids should not have smartphones until they're in high school. And he talked about different ways to do that and how we have to do that as a cohort. You can't just take your student's smartphone away. You have to talk to all the other parents, and the whole cohort gets their smartphones taken away. And then and the kids are actually grateful after a while that they don't have the pressure. So, but yes, there is absolutely very tangible things that we can teach in a curriculum that we can put together. They exist.
Can you sketch something? Can you put together some thoughts about that? Because I think that needs to be part of this. Okay, this is this opportunity that comes about because of a relationship that we had with Brenda Carter, and when push come to shove and it got serious in their ask, we got a leap of faith because we don't have to put it all for them to begin with. We can build it going forward. And we're not in our justification having to write some tome that's 30 pages long. Rather,
What
we're
to that end, Jim, if you could share, what kind of time frame are we looking at in terms of turnaround time? Because I love that piece about the curriculum and maybe, you know, for the relationship. And then as we look at establishing that regional tech hub at the Leona Hicks Library and kicking off the African City School by next year, what kind of time frame are you talking about with this proposal going forth to State Rep Carter, and then the others with whom we may need to network? And I think Mr. Kinley said the correct names for Inkster. You all said the correct names for Flint, and then expecting a turnaround.
That's a great question. If you recall, he was wanting us to move rather quickly, because the opportunity for the dollars that are currently there are dwindling, and now they have a new cache of dollars that they're approaching. So I think this will turn around very quickly. In other words, we will submit it and we'll hear back from them in a timely fashion, like, you know, a couple of weeks. And then the question would be, okay, so when's the date of delivery of funds? What is our process for articulating the outcomes and so forth and so on will be asked at that time, I'm sure.
Right, thank you. I remembered from our conversation with you know, her representative, but everyone wasn't on that call, so I wanted to you know, articulate that. And then also, you know, how we'll, you know, perhaps I think a really good kickoff would be for us to have some sort of combined, you know, it's not a formal ribbon cutting, but it's almost like a virtual ribbon cutting to say we're setting this off, you see.
Right.
So we have, oh, Paula, excited about our kickoff should be for the Michigan Central opening, we're thinking.
Okay, well, that's June 6th, you said. So if we're, okay, that's wonderful then.
Yeah, and we'll put in the appropriation request like soon, within the next day. Like, we're doing this now, right? Yeah. So what, like, our model is thinking about hybrid portal studios, and then funding for design charrettes like this. What we're doing now, we've got a lot of new insights coming in that aren't just, you know, us putting in a proposal together, but we're also discovering new things. So the same thing with the digital design charrettes, and we could have those running.
Right.
So as many as we want. And then within that, Capella, I think, should have a budget piece with maybe the combination of we're going to need to capture this and new measurements and those things. And then your team, Dr. Paula, you should be the new Connect 313. We heard from Connect 313, and you have so many other things, but that's just one piece that, you know, we still got a problem that, yeah, we have all these problems with social, but we got to connect everybody first of all, because another pandemic or anything else is on the way. And that was the only tool that got everyone through. So education being rejecting technology, we're not going there.
We're going to say that they are going to respond, I assure you. Okay, and the answer to your questions is going to be in their response, because they're going to tell us the law of the land, okay, and how this dollars are going to be generated or let loose. And you're also going to deal with some politics, because there are going to be political representatives who are going to be in charge of each one of these efforts. And I don't know what that is. That's why we were reaching out to Melissa to see, you know, who she trusted, so that we could make a recommendation. Okay. But there are, you know, I can't speak for who they hand it off to. Right. I can only inform them that we feel as though this would be the right person. And they still. choose how they're going to do that. And I try to stay out of politics. Okay, I really do. I run.
Well, I'm gonna have, then I wanna just go back and on our mural, because I had placed, State Rep, Joel Jones's name. Perhaps, with what Mr. Kinley shared earlier, we take that name off and replace it with the two names that he mentioned. But
I recognized one of them as being an educator.
thank you.
Yes, Senator Dana Polanki, she is the chair of the education committee, I believe.
Oh,
And she is,
wouldn't that be interesting?
she is very good on education. She said enough with trying to make everyone go back to the factory. And what are we doing? We're not, we're not, we're not producing, we're setting kids up for failure.
Well, let's make that recommendation. Okay, for
Yeah.
sure. I
Yeah.
mean, she's the head of the education.
And I
committee.
have a clip of her saying that. I recorded it and saved it because it was so good, her piece on that. And then there's Senator Mallory McMorrow,
Right.
and maybe they're on the same committee together. But
He mentioned another name though, so I just wanna make sure we capture it because
So,
when we submit
Can I
that
chime
proposal-
in?
Certainly, please do, yeah.
Just real fast. So Dana Pohanke is my state senator.
yes,
So I have a good relationship with her.
right. Yeah, of course you do.
Yeah, so I mean, most of those educational folks, Pohanke, with Gayla, I have a good relationship with them.
Awesome.
So if we need to approach her office, I can speak to her chief of staff.
Here's what I think we should do is we should,
Inkster and us.
yeah, we should put this to Jonathan, okay, who's the chief of staff for Brenda Carter, and let him respond to us and how we go about this.
And
okay?
maybe we should start with what we have
Before
represented.
we contact anybody, we get a feel for what their thoughts are, okay?
And we have Pontiac, there's already an investment in one of our projects. They're a $50 million investment in the Ottawa Tower. So that's our advocacy, is to get a floor of like a hub going there. And then we want to do regional. We have Detroit, Michigan Central, and we're comfortable with that. And then maybe Inkster. And then as people come to it, we could include Flint, we could include,
Right.
expand.
Yeah, and I think there's no problem with us establishing a hub to start. The African City School isn't up and running, but the Leona Hicks Public Library, because it is moving to be a tech hub, that could be our center there, so.
Yes, and do you know that we're very deep in the metaphor of the library as the 21st century classroom?
Yeah.
There's no better place to make that real than a library. Like,
yeah,
just that's the way every classroom should be. Free. You're exploring your own interests, you're researching, you've got people to help you, you can collaborate on projects.
It's a knowledge place. I mean,
Totally. I love it.
This is a knowledge economy, and libraries are a knowledge place.
Okay, well, I know I have another meeting. I hate to cut
No,
it
no.
on.
We're gonna draft something.
We don't go long, okay?
Yeah.
Just to go.
Well,
Okay.
any last thoughts, anyone? We'll be drafting and sharing out.
Yeah.
But if you have pieces for yourself, if you can sketch something.
Sketch so that we can allude to them in the short that we send, okay?
We have what we've determined, but if we don't know what all, we're thinking digital portal, hubs and design charrettes and a new measurement system, those things, but that's.
We're addressing the lack of understanding that the current education system has, and we're offering a potentially value creation model. I mean, what do? We receive money to educate, and the product is lost. If one is in value creation, the product is not lost. It produces value. And one could say, well, we educated a kid. Well, that's great. But what about the value that the child has in of their own agency, that they toil in task on behalf of a credential? What if that were something that was valued in the community, that actually produced additional value? And placemaking's a great example of creating value, and we all recognize it. And it is oftentimes not about how much money we spent, but what it was spent on and what the resultant outcome produced. And kids have this really wonderful attribute about them when they're actively engaged in something that they are contributing their energy and imagination to. And I did a thing called Discovery Program for 15 years while I was at the observatory. And it was all about their agency as opposed to our ideas for them. And the significant accomplishments that these young people had because they were allowed to create their own proposition in project led them to become, well, one became the president of his class at U of M. Another became a star recruit for Microsoft. And I could go on and on and on about the value chain that once unleashed for a young person, for which they are in charge of their own execution, is dynamic.
So I want to add with that, Jim, that's excellent. What I want to add for emphasis with the African City School, the full name is it of or for, Dr. Elizabeth, but innovation and leadership. So as we are creating this value chain, value creation, the credentialing, perhaps that's part of the investment there as we are looking to establish a school, is credentialing in the lines of innovation and leadership, or credentialing that comes with what Capella offered in terms of relationship capital. So,
Right.
but because that is the full name of the school, so we are being innovative. Does it house our new Connect 313734? Because that's, Detroit, the Inkster has 313 area code and 734. Or is that housed at the Leon Hicks? But as the expansion from Pontiac. So I just want to offer that.
Yep.
Love it.
So when do they come online? How do we address that? What is their?
Well, that's the launch is we are proposing a launch of September 2025 for the African City School.
Okay.
That's where I'm saying if there's a way to build this in, because we will work closely with Leona Hicks Public Library with GABA. So I will look at a value statement. I'll work with Dr. Elizabeth and see what we can submit, and Mr. Kindley, see what we can submit on behalf of what we're doing there, so that it could be part of this hub.
We can weave that into the timeline, okay, as a exemplar of the efforting, okay. And I think they're not going to be looking at any serious return on investment. It'd be 2 years. It'd be 2026. Okay, I mean, so
Right.
that would be in keeping with what their bureaucratic proposition allows.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Any
Any additional? Well, we really thought we were pushing buttons here today, and we were looking at exactly what made sense. And I think we made a lot of sense today. And I admire the insights from George and as well from Ken. And of course, Paula always, but in Capella, I think we should be talking about what is a documentary proposition worth, because they're going to need that in order to scale that. So we ought to add that into this proposition, and you more than us would know, what kind of dollar number that is, and what kind of execution. It may be that there needs to be a whole unit of the continuance, okay? Because the process is not one and done. It's one of many over time. And so if they buy into this, I think they would be looking for ways in which to scale it. And we can beat their price. I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure we can beat their price because their price will be astronomical. And who better to be doing it than the people who are doing it? If we just happen to have somebody with talent who's doing it. So you render under Caesar's that which is Caesar's.
And Dr. Paula's got hand up again. Yeah.
I had an oh my God moment about Capella in the documentary.
Oh, good. What's that?
Because that's part of what Robert was talking about. We need to document this. And if we can document how we've impacted and changed lives, and I'm drawn to, there's a person out of California, I'd have to look it up and send it to you, Capella, who's done a piece on Piney Woods. And Piney Woods, are you familiar with that?
Yeah, I saw it. I know the filmmaker. It's beautiful. I actually know someone who just graduated from Piney Woods.
Get up here.
And she's a documentary filmmaker. She's amazing. She's young and she's a documentary filmmaker. She's amazing. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you know where I'm going with that in terms of even, as we're looking at property for the school and thinking about, is there a space for a garden, or is there a space for, what is this place-making space?
Yeah.
But anyway, to start documenting the lives of the kids before they come to us, are they entrenched in going to the Inkster Library before? And just, I don't know. I just had an oh my God moment.
There you go. That's good.
Also, we could teach the students the skills and give them, their own autonomy to tell their own.
There we go.
That's where we're going.
There
Yeah.
we go.
And we had a good conversation about that in our World Cities forum with Chico was talking about. He didn't join us today, but that's okay. We'll get him, and he's got good thoughts on the power of those tools used for productive storytelling.
And Monica just reminded me, we're part of this rollout on World Creativity and Innovation Day. In leadership, we haven't even reported into leadership about what took place after our event day. And they're going to be excited. They're going to be extraordinarily excited about this little incubator who they thought would bring something forth, but I don't think they imagined anything of this kind of scale. That gives us access to their platform. Their platform's worldwide.
And that's something that Mr. Kinley and Dr. Elizabeth missed the introduction from Capella. So they didn't know about her being a filmmaker to know that, here's someone that we have as part of the team. But I just wanted to throw that out there.
That is awesome. Awesome.
Yeah. All right. So let's.
Thank you, everybody. I have a 3 o'clock, so I got to run. Thank you, guys.
Okay,
All right.
Hang up.
All right. Peace.
Yeah,
Thank you. Bless you.
Okay, thank you. And I'm sure, Monica, I'll follow back up with you. I've got to dash as well.
All right. Awesome.
Okay, we'll be working on our shortened versions and
Yeah.
Okay, and we'll
everybody.
get something to you to plug in how we can synthesize where the funds could go to support the African City School, Leona Hicks Library as a hub center and all of that.
Awesome.
and
Beautiful.
AICI. Okay,
Beautiful. It was nice to meet everyone that we met today. And bye, Paula.
okay, bye. We'll talk. Okay.
Okay, see you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Elizabeth. Bye-bye.
Yes.